I stood frozen in the festival crowd, my heart pounding as Ethan's voice boomed through the speakers, claiming my catering company as his own. Every word was a lie, each cheer a stab to my chest, hundreds of people clapping for the man who'd erased me from my own dream. How do you rebuild when someone you loved steals your life's work? I'd spent years crafting every recipe for Harvest Glow, pouring my soul into sustainable dishes that fed hearts as much as stomachs. But Ethan, my charming ex, thought he could bury me, rewriting our story to make himself the star. What he didn't know was the one tiny mistake I'd found in his shiny new empire. A single clause that could bring it all crashing down. I wasn't just angry, I was ready to take back everything. Want to know how I turned his betrayal into his downfall? Stick around because this move was sweeter than any dessert I ever baked. If you've ever been betrayed, drop your story in the comments and hit that subscribe button. Let's dive into how I made him pay. I'm in my new kitchen, whisking lavender extract into a bowl of creamy frosting, the scent filling the air like a warm hug. My name's Claire, and this cake, my signature lavender honey cake, is where this story begins. 4 years ago, I met a man who stole my dreams. Today, I'll tell you how I took them back. I'm 33 now, a pastry chef who's always believed food can do more than feed you. It can tell a story. I grew up on my grandparents' farm, learning to bake with fresh herbs and seasonal fruit, dreaming of a business that honored the earth. Sustainability wasn't just a buzzword to me, it was a promise. That's what led me to a community garden in Portland where I met Ethan. It was spring, and we were planting basil for a food bank, dirt smudged on our hands. Ethan was 30, an event planner with a smile that could light up a room. He had this way of making you feel like the only person there, telling stories about rooftop weddings he'd planned. We bonded over our love for local food, laughing about how we both hated overpriced kale. He called my idea for a sustainable catering company genius, and I blushed, thinking we could be something special. His charm was electric, my quiet passion for cooking grounded us. It felt like we were meant to build something together. That's how Harvest Glow was born. I spent months developing recipes. Think heirloom tomato tarts, rosemary focaccia, and that lavender cake everyone raved about. I'd drive to farms an hour away to source organic produce, building relationships with growers like Maria, who supplied our beets, and Tom, whose honey made my desserts sing. I trained a small team to nail every dish, tweaking flavors until they were perfect. Ethan? He was the face. He'd charm clients at wine bars, booking us for small weddings and corporate lunches. Our first event, a garden party for 50, got us a write-up in a local food blog. Harvest Glow's dishes are love-made edible, they said. I framed that quote on our fridge. Ethan handled the spotlight. I made the magic in the kitchen. It felt like the perfect balance. But then things started to shift. I'd hear Ethan in client meetings saying, "My concept," instead of "ours." At first, I thought I misheard. He'd always been the talker, after all. But it kept happening. The worst was at a food industry mixer, where we served my lavender cake to a room of caterers and critics. A woman in a sharp blazer asked about the recipe, and before I could answer, Ethan jumped in. "It's my take on a classic," he said, winking at her. I stood there holding a tray of samples, my throat tight. My cake. My late nights testing ratios. He didn't even glance at me. Later, in the car, I called him out. "Ethan, that was my recipe. Why'd you say that?" He laughed, squeezing my hand. "Sweetheart, it's just how the game works. Clients want a story." I wanted to argue, but his charm softened me. I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit as long as Harvest Glow grew. I was wrong. Living together made it harder to see the truth. Our apartment was a mess of recipe notes, farmer contacts, and client files. I'd stay up late perfecting a new chutney, while Ethan scrolled venue listings. We'd celebrate bookings with cheap wine, toasting to us. Harvest Glow wasn't just a business, it was my heart on a plate. Every farmer I worked with, like Sarah, who grew our heirloom carrots, felt like family. Every event was a chance to share my love for food that didn't harm the planet. I thought Ethan and I were building a legacy together, something honest and real. I'd lie in bed, imagining our name on a storefront one day, believing he felt the same. But deep down, I was starting to doubt. His dismissal stung more each time. I'd catch myself wondering why he never mentioned me in pitches, why he'd interrupt when I tried to talk to clients. I'd push the thoughts away, telling myself love meant trusting him. I was so invested in him, in us, in Harvest Glow, that I ignored the cracks forming. Have you ever trusted someone with your dreams only to see them claim the spotlight? The signs are there, but love blinds you. Drop a comment if you've been through this. I'd love to hear your story. Harvest Glow was growing faster than I'd ever imagined. By late 2022, we were catering events for 200 guests, booking corporate galas and vineyard weddings. I was working 16-hour days, tweaking menus to showcase seasonal ingredients, like a winter squash ravioli that took 3 weeks to perfect. My hands smelled of sage and thyme, my arms ached from kneading dough, but every plate that left my kitchen felt like a victory. Ethan, meanwhile, was out at industry parties, clinking glasses with event planners and food bloggers. I didn't mind at first. I loved the quiet of my kitchen. But then I saw our new marketing flyers at an event. They called Ethan chef and founder of Harvest Glow. My name? Nowhere. I felt my stomach drop, staring at the glossy paper. I wasn't a chef? I wasn't even a co-founder? When I asked him about it, he waved it off. It's just branding, Claire. Clients need a face. I swallowed my anger, but it lingered like a bad taste. That spring, I created a seasonal menu that changed everything. It featured dishes like charred asparagus with lemon balm vinaigrette and my lavender cake, now paired with a blackberry compote. Food critics started noticing us. A review in Portland Bites called our food a celebration of the land. I was thrilled, expecting to see my name in the article. Instead, it praised Ethan Miller's visionary approach. Ethan soaked it up, forwarding the link to clients while I scrubbed pots in the back. I told myself it was fine. He was the face, I was the heart. But each review that ignored me chipped away at my confidence. Was I invisible? The real blow came when we landed a high-profile client, a wealthy couple planning their 25th anniversary at their sprawling estate. I spent days prepping sample dishes, roasted beet tartlets, quail eggs with chive cream, and a mini version of my lavender cake. I barely slept, checking every detail, wanting to impress. At their mansion, I set up a tasting table, my hands shaking as I arranged plates. Ethan greeted the couple with his usual charm, all handshakes and easy laughs. Then he introduced me. This is Claire, she handles the baking. Baking? I'd created every dish they were about to eat. I forced a smile, serving samples while Ethan sat with them, spinning a story about his vision for sustainable catering. The wife, dripping in pearls, leaned forward. Ethan, what inspired this beet tartlet? It's divine. He didn't miss a beat. I wanted to capture the earthiness of summer, he said, as if he'd ever touched a beet. I stood there, tray in hand, my face burning. I wasn't just sidelined, I was erased. That night, in our apartment kitchen, I couldn't hold it in. I faced Ethan as he scrolled his phone, sipping a beer. Those are my recipes, I said, my voice shaking. My stories, my relationships with farmers like Maria and Tom, you didn't even mention me. He rolled his eyes, setting his bottle down. You're being dramatic, Claire. This is how business works. Clients want one person to trust. His words cut deeper than I expected. Was I overreacting? I turned away, my eyes stinging, and started stress baking, kneading dough until my hands hurt. I stayed up all night, replaying the day, questioning my worth. By morning, I found an email on our shared account. Ethan had booked interviews with 2 food magazines, listing himself as the sole contact. My heart sank. He wasn't just taking credit. He was rewriting our story. Our relationship crumbled alongside the business. Ethan started staying out late, networking, coming home with faint traces of perfume on his jacket. I threw myself into the kitchen, escaping into recipes, but the joy was fading. I noticed he'd bought new suits and a fancy watch, yet he told me we needed to cut costs on ingredients. I found a stack of business cards in his bag. Harvest Glow's logo, his name, his title, founder. Mine was nowhere, Each discovery was a fresh wound, but I kept hoping he'd change, that we could fix this. I was clinging to a dream that wasn't mine anymore. The final straw was a magazine feature in Northwest Eats. It called Ethan a rising star chef entrepreneur, detailing his farm-to-table vision. I read it alone in our kitchen, the apartment silent except for the hum of the fridge. The article described him plating my dishes, my ravioli, my cake, as if he'd dreamed them up. There was a photo spread. Ethan in a crisp apron, smiling over a table of my food. The worst part? A quote where he claimed he'd translated his childhood on a farm into memorable dining experiences. Ethan grew up in a suburb, not a farm. It was a lie, and he'd built it on my work. I sat there, the magazine shaking in my hands, tears blurring the page. I wasn't just hurt, I was done. He thought he could steal my soul and parade it as his own. He was wrong. The worst betrayals happen slowly, don't they? You see the signs but hope you're mistaken. What would you have done after reading that article? Would you have confronted him right away or planned your next move carefully? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear. The regional food festival was supposed to be our big moment. For weeks I'd been buzzing with excitement, picturing Harvest Glow's name in lights, my dishes finally getting the recognition they deserved. I spent days sourcing the freshest ingredients, plump figs from Maya's farm, goat cheese from a local dairy, while testing new recipes like a fennel pollen shortbread that took 7 tries to get right. I trained our staff to plate every dish perfectly, down to the garnish. Ethan kept saying, "We'll present together this time, Claire. I promise." I believed him, imagining us sharing the stage, telling the story of Harvest Glow as a team. The festival was packed with food critics, event planners, and chefs, all gathered under colorful tents along the Willamette River. The air smelled of grilled corn and fresh bread, and I could feel the energy of something big about to happen. But when I checked the program that morning, my name wasn't there. Only Ethan's, listed as founder and chef of Harvest Glow. My heart sank, but I convinced myself it was a mistake. I was setting up our booth, arranging plates of my shortbread and lavender cake, when the MC called Ethan to the main stage. I stood in the crowd, expecting him to wave me up. He didn't. He stepped into the spotlight, all smiles, and launched into a speech about how he created Harvest Glow from the ground up. He even described my grandmother's preserved lemon recipe, passed down from her farm days, as something he'd dreamed up. My knees nearly buckled. The crowd clapped, cameras flashed, and I stood there, invisible, my apron still dusted with flour. He was stealing my soul in front of hundreds of people. Afterward, a festival organizer approached me, confused. "Aren't you supposed to be up there too?" she asked, glancing at my Harvest Glow badge. I mumbled something about a mix-up, my face hot with shame. I watched critics swarm Ethan, shaking his hand, praising his vision. A food blogger asked for his recipe secrets, and he laughed, promising to share his process. I wanted to scream, but I was rooted to the spot, my chest tight with betrayal. Backstage, in the chaotic vendor area, I cornered him. "You promised we'd present together," I said, my voice shaking. "You told them my recipes were yours." Ethan barely looked up from his phone. "You're not built for the spotlight, love," he said, his tone cold. "Let me take it from here." I felt like I'd been slapped. Desperate, I demanded to see our business paperwork, something I'd never thought to check. He hesitated, then handed me his laptop with a smirk. My hands trembled as I opened the file. There it was, the business license, changed months ago, listing Ethan as the sole owner. My name was gone. He'd rewritten our company behind my back, locking me out of my own dream. "You did this without telling me?" I whispered. He shrugged. "It's cleaner this way." That night, I left our apartment. I packed my recipe notebook, the one with my grandmother's handwriting in the margins, and a suitcase of clothes. Ethan watched me go, leaning against the counter with a beer in hand. "You'll be back when you calm down," he said, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. I didn't answer. I drove to Maya's farm, one of our suppliers, and collapsed on her couch. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a mug of tea and let me cry. For days, I couldn't eat or sleep. I'd scroll Harvest Glow's social media, seeing posts about Ethan's innovative menus and glowing reviews of my dishes. Each one was a reminder of what I'd lost. Not just a business, but the life I thought we'd built together. 3 weeks later, I was still on Maya's couch, my life in pieces. I got a notification. Harvest Glow had landed a massive corporate contract, catering a tech firm's annual retreat. Then I saw Ethan's latest interview in a local paper, calling himself a self-taught chef who built everything from scratch. He described his journey, claiming he'd spent years perfecting recipes. It was a lie so bold it snapped something inside me. I sat there staring at my phone and felt the grief shift to something sharper. Determination. I wasn't done. I stopped crying and started planning. Ethan thought he'd buried me, but he'd missed something crucial. I still had every email, every draft, every contract we'd ever shared, and I knew his weaknesses, his laziness, his sloppy paperwork, his need to cut corners. I wasn't sure how yet, but I'd make him regret this. That moment, when you decide to stop being a victim and start fighting back, changes everything. Have you ever hit that turning point in your life, where heartbreak turns to resolve? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. What would you do if someone stole your life's work? I wasn't going to let Ethan win, but I needed proof. I started with Maya, who'd seen me build Harvest Glow from the ground up. Over coffee at her farmhouse, she pulled out old texts where I'd discussed sourcing her figs and beets. "You're the heart of this, Claire," she said, promising to back me. I reached out to other farmers, Tom, who supplied honey, and Sarah, who grew our carrots. They confirmed I'd been their contact, not Ethan, and offered written statements. Digging through my email, I found a goldmine. Messages showing I'd created every menu, from initial sketches to final dishes. I also had photos and videos, me in the kitchen, testing recipes, plating my lavender cake. Former clients, like a bride who'd raved about my shortbread, agreed to confirm I'd designed their menus. Then I uncovered Ethan's biggest mistake. Bank records showing he'd funneled Harvest Glow's profits into a personal account, plus the paper trail of him changing the business license behind my back. Every piece of evidence was a brick in my case. One night, I was combing through files at Maya's, sipping tea, when I found the key. I'd kept a copy of the anniversary party contract from that wealthy couple. Reading it under the dim glow of a lamp, I spotted a clause. All menu items and presentations must be executed by the original creator. My heart raced. Those clients had booked us because of my dishes, the beet tartlets, the quail eggs, the lavender cake they'd tasted at their estate. I called Maya over, pointing at the screen. "This is it," I said. I learned those clients weren't just rich. They were major investors in the corporate deal Ethan had just landed. If I could prove I was the creator, Ethan's contract would collapse. I'd found his Achilles heel. I couldn't do this alone. I reached out to Jess, a friend from culinary school who'd become a business attorney. Over lunch, she reviewed my evidence and grinned. "He's sloppy, Claire. We've got him." I met with farmers Ethan had stiffed on payments, their frustration fueling their support. 2 fired kitchen staffers who'd seen me train them on every recipe joined my cause, angry at Ethan's lies. A food critic, Rachel, who'd noticed inconsistencies in Ethan's recent interviews, agreed to help after I showed her my proof. We gathered at Maya's dining table, papers spread out, mapping every move like a chess game. Jess laid out our legal strategy. Rachel suggested timing our reveal for maximum impact. I felt a fire growing inside me. This wasn't just my fight anymore. I spent weeks preparing. I compiled a portfolio of my recipes, each backed by emails, photos, and timestamps. Farmers sent notarized letters confirming I'd built those relationships. Jess coached me on how to present my case, practicing until my voice was steady. Maya and my new team became my anchor, reminding me why I was doing this. One night, Jess asked if I was ready to face Ethan. I nodded. "I'm not just fighting for me," I said. "I'm fighting for every dish I created, every farmer I promised to support." The night before our move, I lay on Maya's couch, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully, dreaming of justice. The day arrived, a massive corporate event where Ethan was presenting Harvest Glow to investors, including that wealthy couple. I stood in the back of the sleek conference hall, my team beside me, watching Ethan take the stage. He was all charm, gesturing to a table of my dishes, my ravioli, my shortbread, as he pitched his vision. My pulse pounded, but I waited. Halfway through his speech, I walked in, Jess and Rachel flanking me, my portfolio under my arm. The room hushed. Ethan's eyes widened, his voice faltering. The wealthy couple, seated near the front, recognized me instantly. The wife's face lit up. "Claire," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I stepped forward, calm but firm, and said, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about who created these dishes." The air shifted. Ethan froze, his hands gripping the podium. I could see the panic in his eyes, but I stood tall, ready to lay out the truth. Planning the perfect revenge takes patience and strategy. Would you have waited for the right moment like I did, or confronted him sooner? Comment below with what you'd have done. I'm curious to hear. Ethan's face went pale as I stood in the conference hall, my team behind me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I held my portfolio tightly, my voice steady as I addressed the room. "I created every dish Harvest Glow is known for," I said, laying out photos, emails, and farmer statements. The wealthy couple nodded, the wife standing up. "These are definitely Claire's dishes," she said firmly. We watched her prepare them at our tasting. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The corporate representatives, stone-faced, requested a private meeting. Ethan stammered, "She's just my disgruntled ex." But his charm was crumbling, and everyone could see it. I walked out of the hall, head high, knowing I'd just shifted the game. In a sleek boardroom, I sat with Jess, the corporate team, and the wealthy couple. I presented the business license fraud, Ethan's secret changes to cut me out, and the contract clause requiring the original creator for all dishes. Jess slid over bank records showing Ethan's siphoned profits. The couple confirmed they'd hired Harvest Glow for my work, not his. Cornered, Ethan slumped in his chair, muttering, "Okay, she helped with the recipes." It was all he could manage. The corporate lead didn't hesitate. "We're terminating your contract, Mr. Miller," she said. Then she turned to me. "Ms. Thompson, we'd like to discuss working with you directly." I nearly cried right there. They didn't just cancel his deal, they offered it to me. Justice came swiftly. Jess filed a lawsuit for fraud and intellectual property theft. Ethan settled fast, returning full business rights to me and paying compensation for my stolen work. Word spread in Portland's food scene, blogs and critics exposed his lies, and clients dropped him. He was radioactive. A week later, I got a text from him. "I never thought you'd fight back like this." I didn't reply. He didn't deserve my words. The industry embraced me, with Northwest Eats running a follow-up piece. Claire Thompson, the true heart of Harvest Glow. I framed it, a quiet reminder of what I'd won. Looking back, I learned hard lessons. I'd trusted too blindly, undervalued my own worth. Harvest Glow was my creation, but I'd let Ethan dim my light. I vowed to protect my work with clear contracts and stronger boundaries. Cooking became my healing, kneading dough, slicing herbs, tasting new flavors. I rediscovered the joy of my craft, free from his shadow. The recipes were always mine. I just needed the courage to claim them. 6 months later, I launched my new company, True Plate, built on honesty and respect. I partnered with Maya, Tom, and Sarah, who'd stood by me, and hired back my old kitchen staff, giving them fair pay and credit. Our first event, a charity gala, was a hit. My fennel pollen shortbread stole the show. The wealthy couple hired me for their next anniversary, and as I watched guests savor my lavender cake, I felt whole again. Portland Bites called True Plate a triumph of authenticity, and I smiled, knowing I'd earned every word. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's rebuilding stronger than before. Have you ever turned a betrayal into your greatest success? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. This journey showed me that your passion can't be stolen if you're willing to fight for it. If you enjoyed this tale of justice and reclaiming what's yours, please subscribe for more stories of sweet revenge and remarkable comebacks. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Ethan thought he could erase me, but I built something he'll never touch.